Hey everybody, welcome to another Song of Iron video. I'm super excited about this one because we're going to talk about the first year in development of the game, and it has been a crazy first year. I would have never thought it would have gotten this far. I really just started it as a little passion project. I just can't believe that I'm at where I'm at with it. It's so exciting. I want to talk about where everything started for the game, stuff I've learned along the way, and a little bit of where I'm hoping to go with it. Song of Iron is my first solo development project, but it's not my first game. I've been making games for almost 15 years in the industry as an animator. It's been a crazy journey, and I want to bring all of that knowledge with me into Song of Iron, but also I want to share it in this video and more videos like it so that people who are interested in games or learning how to make them, or just kind of curious about what's going on in the background can get some of that information here. If you have questions about that, totally put them in the comments. I'd love to answer them, or maybe they even become part of another video. When I started, I actually had a completely different game idea, and it was way too big of a game. It was an open world shooter, survival, semi-realistic. It was a nightmare because it was just way too complicated for what I could handle.
So I ended up making the decision to move on from that game, and to set myself up for more success on the next project, I decided to start with some really heavy limitations that would keep my scope down, but also focus me to a cleaner and more simple project. So right away, I jumped to the side scroller aesthetic because it was just going to be one less dimension I needed to worry about. Other limitations were the inventory system, which there basically isn't one. What's on your character is what you got. The UI is non existent for the most part, so that's one less thing to worry about. And I knew I wanted to use my skills that I've gotten through my 15 years in the game industry, which is animation. And I really love grounded, realistic animation styles. So I wanted to bring that comfort level to this project. So pretty quickly, I started to see this game forming in front of me, and it was going to be, a side-scrolling, kind of realistic fighter. I thought of stuff like the early Prince of Persia and some other games like that, where it was really heavily reliant on animation, and I thought that'd be really cool to modernize some of those games and see what they would look like, with the graphics that we have now and all that kind of stuff. But I love those old games, so I thought if I could make a game that felt like these old games, do it in the way that I can make it, which is 3D animation, maybe I could get something really cool. And so that's what I started to make. The very beginning of a project is all about having fun with it and experimenting. And I know I had this great idea to have a really physics based sort of gang beats, but way more realistic game where you'd swing your axe, it'd get stuck into the shield of an enemy, and then the two of you would have to fight over it by pulling, and I mean, realistically, I think it actually sounded really fun, but I just couldn't do it. I didn't know the system well enough, or Unreal well enough, blueprints well enough. So I have some really funny videos of it, but that's about it. But I learned a lot because it was okay. Like, it's okay to try stuff and for it to just uh, not work out at all. Always think of this sort of thing as learning, and never think of it like you're failing. It's so important to try stuff out and to experiment and to see what works and doesn't work. You're never going to know otherwise. It's impossible to just start making and have everything you build work out. As long as you're paying attention to what you've done, what you've tried, and why it didn't work, then everything is a successful experience. I always think that sharing early is one of the most important things you could do. So, I'm making this goofy prototype physics fighter that looks really silly. But I started posting that. I started putting it on YouTube. I was sharing it with the Unreal subreddit, and and while there was some really goofy stuff in the beginning, there was also, the basis of a real game there, because I did have an idea. I had been building a character and starting to build an environment because I was just experimenting with everything. How could I make it look? Could I make a character, rig him, animate him, and get him through the whole pipeline? I was doing all of that stuff. So I was able to, I wasn't confident at all, I guess. I was able to show this video in the subreddit, and I actually got some really positive feedback. And I owe a ton to
the Unreal community because it was super raw. I didn't totally know where I was going, but they responded really well to a few of my core ideas, and I'm lucky because those were the things that I was starting to feel like maybe this will set me apart from other 2D side-scrolling fighting games. And those are the things that they responded to, but they also helped refine some of those ideas with feedback. And it's so important to listen to feedback. I'll say it probably forever in tons of different videos, but feedback is everything. And if you're not listening to what people are saying about your game, then it's hard to understand like what you'd be making the game for. You don't always have to do what people say, but you really need to listen. People are telling you the truth 99% of the time. They may be interpreting stuff wrong, or you may be interpreting their feedback wrong. So always listen to feedback. It's so valuable.
A few months went by of me posting every other week or so, and things were all going really well. I think we're getting into like October, November of last year, and unfortunately work got really busy. Some stuff at home, made me really busy, and I actually stopped working on Song of Iron altogether. The motivation kind of drained because I was just sort of exhausted from life, and it was just so easy to sit down and watch TV compared to sit down on my computer and work. And I think this is something that happens to a lot of people with projects like this. They kind of hit this phase where it stops being this little thing for fun and starts to become a commitment. And that can be, I don't want to say scary, but it can be demotivating in a way. And it took a lot of effort for me to get back into it. I think I stopped working for almost an entire month. I basically had to force myself to just open Unreal one day. And I just opened it. I didn't do anything. It was just like, okay, here's my first step back into the habit of working on it. And then the next day I opened up the game and I just played the game a little bit. I had no commitment to do any work on it whatsoever. I just played a little bit and turned it off. And then the next day, I chose to mess around with the environment, something that's really easy. It's just pure art in a way. Move some stuff around, play the game. And now, through this sort of like baby steps process, I was able to get myself back into this habit of working and driving forward. And within a couple weeks, I was fully back committed to the project. I was excited again. I was motivated again. And it took such a silly, like literally just turning it on again to go through it. And it's a good thing because that kind of led up right up to the end of the year, the new year, and that's where stuff really started to kick off. It wasn't long after this that I found a really good GDC talk by David Whalen. It's called No Time, No Budget, No Problem, Finishing the First Tree. I really recommend it. It's an awesome talk. He's an indie dev like me, solo, did the project all by himself. And I took tons of really good advice from it, but something that stood out to me was that he had gone viral at one point on Reddit, but he didn't have a Steam page set up yet, and he felt like that was a really big failure in his sort of order of operations because all of that traffic and attention he had for that one day, it had nowhere to go. So he really advised, setting up those, Steam stores really early and other stuff like that. So I took that to heart once I realized I wanted to make this a real thing. And, I was super fortunate to also have my game go viral on Reddit for a day. Yeah, I posted to Our Gaming in mid-February, early February, and I broke 130,000 upvotes. I went to the front page of Reddit, and it was crazy day. All the attention was amazing. It was really positive feedback. I mean, it was just, I'm so lucky to have had this happen. It's sort of like a lightning strike kind of moment. But what was the most lucky thing about it was that I had seen this GDC talk. So I had a Steam page. People went to that Steam page from that day, and I converted over 10% of those upvotes into wish lists. And that is massive. I mean, that is a huge, huge start. The Steam page had gone live like days before. So I owe David a huge thanks for that talk. It was super awesome. I've put a link in the description. Everyone should go check it out. It's awesome. Something else that started to happen after the post went viral is I started to hear from a bunch of people who wanted to help me get this project out and make it a reality. And I'm talking about composers, voice actors, character artists, and so on. Just people really liking the game and liking it enough to sort of offer their services or want to partner up on it. It was such an awesome thing. It really made me feel better again about what I was doing and that I was on the right path. And it was just great. I really appreciate every one of those messages. And then also, I started to hear from publishers, which was crazy, and eventually Xbox. And while I think there was a ton of really cool opportunities there, I ended up deciding to go just with Xbox and the ID at Xbox team for my game. For me and for my situation, it was just sort of the best of both worlds. Everybody's situation is going to be different, but that was the decision I ended up going with, and I'm super happy about it. And because of it, I ended up being in effectively what was this year's E3 in the pre-show as part of their montage and sort of indie showcase. And like, how cool is that? That was the craziest thing. I would have never thought in a million years that the project would have been able to be in a place like that. It was so awesome. And I owe those guys a huge thank you for reaching out and for what support they've already given me in the project. Because of it, I needed to find a composer, which is when I reached out to Will, who is the composer now, and he had sent a demo, sort of an idea of what he thought the music could be like for the game, and I really, really liked it. He sang in it, and he found a Nordic poem that he turned into lyrics, and it was just this awesome recording, and that's actually the most recent video on the YouTube channel. You should totally check it out. That's like an early draft of music that we're going to put in the game, but it's so awesome. I'm so happy with how that turned out. I also was able to work with a group called Strikecast. They helped me with the sound design of the trailer because sound in general hadn't been something I had spent a bunch of time on yet. There's a little bit of stuff, but they really just plussed it. And the trailer sounds so much better now. All the time to set up for the showcase and the conversations with the publishers and Xbox does take a lot of time, and I've had to keep working on the game throughout all of it. So I've been slowly converting the way I've been thinking about my code and what I'm building to try to be scalable so that I can more quickly build out the full game. And then if I need to change stuff along the way, I have a more flexible system to do it. I talk about it in much more depth in an earlier video, but it's all about creating a system which allows you to be flexible. The last thing you want to do is manually code each individual event in case something goes wrong and you have to change them. You don't want to have to go back and change every single one. What if that happens and you have 1,000, enemies in the world, and now you have to go back to manually change every single one of those? What if you can make a system where you only have to change it once, and then that will propagate across to all of those characters instantly? That's the sort of systems that I've been working on over the course of spring and into summer to really prepare myself to build the bulk of the game. So I guess this video turned into a little bit more of a story of the first year of Song of Iron and less of like a top 10 things I learned list. But hopefully with the context, some of those lessons actually make even more sense. I think at its core, the thing that I would take away from 1 year of development is to keep it simple. People talk about that all the time, and I can't stress it enough. You want to do 3 things amazingly instead of doing 15 things okay. But you want to do that not just so that your game's good. You want to do it so you can get somewhere with your game, so you can actually make progress on your game. If you have to split your focus 30 ways, there's such a better chance that you're going to stop working on the project altogether. Why make a crazy open world space fighter sim with melee combat if you never finish it? Why not just make a really nice melee combat game, right? The other thing is to never stop practicing. I constantly make new little projects to try out little ideas before I bring them into Song of Iron's project. I do it both because I want to see if what I've learned along the way is still applying to new stuff. Can I try this thing that I failed at before again? Do I know enough now to do it?
And that sort of training process and that training mentality is super important. You never fail when you're trying stuff, and you specifically never fail if you learn from what you've done, and so you can apply that information to the next thing you try. And of course, start posting right away. Post everything you're working on. People love to see the development of stuff. They love to watch a project grow, but also you're going to be able to get some feedback. Feedback is so important, especially early on, to help you course correct before it's too late. Remember that you know all the ins and outs of your game. You've been playing it from the very beginning. Someone could come in who's never seen it, watch a video, or maybe a friend comes over and plays it. They may get super confused by something that you already know so well that you don't even think about. It's important to get information like that from them so you can make corrections like that early. And part of posting is getting ready for, in case people do really like it. Do you want them to start following you? Do you want Twitter to be your main thing? YouTube, whatever it might be? Have a place for people to go that like your game and that want to know more. It's going to help you out in the long run, especially if you're serious about making the game. And the last thing, and it should be, it should go without saying, is you should be having fun making your game. This is like, for me, it's almost like another version of playing video games is making video games. Because I'm solving problems, I'm trying new stuff out, and working on different strategies. All the classic stuff that comes with a game is what I get out of making a game. It is really fun. Of course, it can be stressful, and as it gets more and more serious, it's getting more and more stressful, but I still love it. I still think about it all the time. All my friends are so tired of hearing me talk about it at this point that, now I'm turning to you and I'm talking to you about it. So thanks for listening. I really hope that you like this video. It was a super long one for sure, but this was voted on by Twitter of what they wanted to hear from me next. And so I really wanted to go in depth of what the first year of the game was like. If you have any questions about this or other game dev stuff, put it in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel. It's going to help me out. It's going to help the game out. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for checking this out, and I'll see you in the next video.